in Cape Town. In Pretoria, we are joined by 3 tourism officials who will be on hand to assist us if there are further questions. And I, in saying so, would like to acknowledge the ministers in attendance. This post-cabinet briefing will be led by the acting minister in the Presidency, Minister Mapisa-Nqakula. We're also joined by Minister Nkwinti, as well as Deputy Minister Dodo, and when we get to question time, it will be apparent where they will be making contributions around issues relating to the economy, as well as open government partnership. With those few words, Minister, please do this.
Thank you very much. I'm told that copies of the statement will be circulated a little later. Well, starting with the meeting, the report back by the Minister of Finance to the President on the progress of government's consultations with the private sector and labor. President mandated the Minister to continue to lead the engagements with all social partners to map out a strategy and come up with measures of growing our economy. Cabinet was pleased that this work has culminated in concrete initiatives that will improve the country's economic prospects. President also announced several priority initiatives on Monday. Remember, President had a meeting with some ministers with business. President announced a joint private and public sector fund for small business support, addressing the constraints to increasing investment in order to accelerate inclusive growth. 3, government and private sector core investment in infrastructure, drawing on experience of the successful independent power producer programs. And lastly, strengthening state-owned enterprises to ensure their financial sustainability and reinforcing their role in driving development. Cabinet, I should say, colleagues, remains confident that government's aggressive fiscal consolidation, for instance, the historic 1 trillion collection by SARS, is highly commendable. And of course, the recently announced 5 short-term interventions by SARS, and which will complement the 9-point plan of government. Cabinet welcomed the announcement by Ratings Moody's Investor Services. Well, of course, you know, there's been a lot of anxiety in the country about whether, in fact, it will be further downgraded or not. So we welcomed the ratings by Moody's, which have not plunged us into a state of crisis. But of course, our intention is to work very efficiently and aggressively to ensure that we maintain the current rating or even improve. Cabinet, of course, noted the Minister of Finance's work with social partners, as I've said, and that there is a credit ratings work stream which will identify potential reforms and interventions to preserve South Africa's strong capital markets. I should say that the President also expressed a word of appreciation to the respective ministers for their performance during the budget debate. Of course, noted that all of the budget votes point to the work which is being done by government, which demonstrates that South Africa indeed is a nation at work. Concrete measures have been put in place, of course, to reduce the negative impact of the global economic downturn on our country, on our economy, and to prepare for robust growth when the economic cycle turns positive. We're working very hard to remove domestic impediments to growth. the budget votes also demonstrate government's situation is indeed a cause for concern, and that it is being addressed. It's being addressed through the implementation of the National Development Plan, through the 9-point plan economic intervention, which seeks to ignite growth and boost jobs in 6 sectors of our economy. Government is using all available initiatives, including its industrial policy action plan, to create more labor-absorbing production and services sector to address unemployment, which has been further impacted by the difficult global and local economic conditions. We are all aware that the Minister Trade and Industry, Comrade Rob Davis, launched the 8th annual iteration of the IPAP 2016-17, 18-19 on the 9th of May at 100% black-owned casting and machining. Which is a facility for young people. The hub, of course, has a mix of facilities which provide for holistic development of young people and for the community at large. Facilities will provide for young people from poor communities with communities to better participate and contribute positively to their communities and to the country. It has a fully equipped skills center, which is being operated by South Cape College and will provide for training in business administration and user computing and early childhood development to 200 National Rural Youth Service Corps, NARISEC participants per year. It will attract young people from the ages of 18 to 25 years who are recruited and enrolled for training in various skills. This youth hub is a pilot project, and I'm glad that the minister is here with me because he is one of the architects of that project. It's a pilot project, first of its kind, and hopefully will be rolled out to all provinces. Cabinet welcomes a recently held 2016 OGP Open Government Partnership This initiative is in response to government's legal framework working through the Environmental Affairs Department and the National Waste Management Strategy Goal to promote recycling enterprises. The plant is the first of its kind on the continent, and there too, in your packages, when you are ultimately given the speech, you will see how we go on and on about what we are likely to achieve out of this. The next item welcomed by Cabinet was the integrated strategic management of the rhinoceros. You are aware that on Sunday, the Minister of Environmental Affairs, together with some ministers from the cluster, security cluster, gave a report back on this work, and further also gave a report back of a commission which they had established. So there too you will see in your report backs. The next matter is Cabinet congratulated the country for hosting a successful 2016 tourism Indaba in Durban. The Indaba concluded on Monday with numerous successful interactions between 1,047 exhibitors from 18 African countries and 1,856 buyers from across the globe. This year, Indaba hosted 3,000 more meetings than last year. In total, 14,000 business meetings took place over the 3 days of the Indaba, presenting a significant economic benefit potential. The event was also attended by 575 national and international journalists. What are the key Cabinet decisions? Cabinet has committed itself to some of the key to implementing some of the key recommendations of the TRC, amongst those being the community rehabilitation projects to redress the injustices of the past. And of course, there are several communities identified in that report. TRC identified a total of 128 communities which were subjected to acts of extreme violence and destruction during the conflict. The Department of Justice will solicit contributions from relevant stakeholders, both from the public and private sector, in order to secure adequate resources for this work. This, of course, will contribute significantly to the realization of the National Development Plan through broadening social cohesion and unity. Of course, redressing the inequalities of the past and the realization of a developmental, capable, and ethical state that treats its citizens with dignity. Cabinet also welcomed the report from the Minister of Telecommunications on the outcomes of the World Radio Communications Conference, which was held from the 2nd to the 27th of November 2015 in Geneva, Switzerland. South Africa led the African group on negotiations, and that led to the region securing additional spectrum for mobile broadband, and Africa managed to protect lower UHF spectrum for digital terrestrial television. More spectrum allocations were made for maritime, aeronautical, and space services. Cabinet also was briefed on decisions taken by the Assembly of the African Union Heads of State in Johannesburg 2015. And of course, Cabinet approved the implementation of South Africa's new assess contribution to the AU in line with the Assembly decision of a new scale of assessment. Why? Because this is based in the main, on our side, on the principle of solidarity, equitable payment, as well as capacity to pay in a manner that ensures that no single country bears a disproportionate share of the budget. Under upcoming events, Cabinet noted that the President will conduct a state visit to Doha, Qatar on the 19th of May, which is next week, aim is to strengthen political and economic relations between the two countries. Cabinet also noted that the Deputy President, as the special envoy of the President, will visit Juba on the 16th of May, Juba, South Sudan. This day, of course, is significant to the South Sudanese as they mark the Sudan People's Liberation Army Day. Of course, the Deputy President will then, as the special envoy, monitor the implementation of the peace agreement. South Sudan, as we all know, reached a milestone at the end of April with the swearing in of the transitional government of national unity. We noted as well that President Jacob Zuma will lead the National and Southern African Development SADC celebration to the University of Fort Hare on the 20th of May. The university's contribution to producing illustrious alumni in the country and Southern Africa bolsters Africa Month celebrations. Cabinet also encourages South African people to participate in the Africa Month multidisciplinary programs that involve different generations and genres under the theme Building a Better Africa and a Better World. All activities will emphasize the centrality of local communities and comprise various disciplines including music, poetry, dance, film, cuisine, fashion, craft, and design. The Cabinet also noted the International Day for Families, which will be celebrated on the 15th of May under the international theme Families, and I quote, Families, Healthy Lives and Sustainable Future, which relates to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, which was adopted in 2015. The International Day for Families was proclaimed by the UN General Assembly, focuses on families, children's and youth's health and well-being. Cabinet noted that from the 16th to the 20th of May, the Department of Water and Sanitation will lead Sanitation and Hygiene Week under the theme, It's Not About Flushing. It's not about flushing. The campaign will raise awareness on the importance of sanitation and promote sanitation's best practices. Key to this program is bucket eradication. Eradication of bucket toilets in formal settlements, for instance in KwaZulu-Natal, Northwest, Mpumalanga, and Gauteng. We noted that the Western Cape has reached 99.8% completion, and that progress in other provinces includes the eradication of 20,560 bucket toilets. Free State, 4,000. Eastern Cape, 2,500. Northern Cape, 2,500. Northwest, 398. The Water and Sanitation Minister will participate in the 84th International Committee on Large Dams, which will be held in Sandton Convention Center from the 15th to the 20th of May. This platform will share knowledge of design, the design, construction, maintenance, and impact of large dams in our communities. It will also include tours of large dams in Southern Africa and will contribute to our water conservation efforts. Next, the Cabinet, as part of the Integrated National Literacy and Numeracy Strategy, the Department of Basic Education is hosting the 2016 Spelling Bee to improve learners' performance in languages. Cabinet calls on all schools, teachers, and parents to encourage primary school learners to enter the 2016 Spelling Bee competition, which closes on the 31st of May 2016. And of course, for more information, people can go on the website. Go to the website on www.education.gov.za. Cabinet strongly condemned the blatant racism that was displayed by some individuals in the country, particularly through the use of the social network platforms, and did express its disgust and laments the upsurge of racism in the country. This, of course, arose as a result of the behavior and some of the statements made by Judge Mabel Johnson. We did say that the pronouncement and the statements made by the esteemed member of the judiciary were unfortunate and are not in keeping with what our society expects from members of the judiciary. That, of course, the judiciary should always act impartially and in a manner that is beyond reproach. That tolerance and respect has been a cornerstone of our struggle for freedom and remains an essential part of South Africa's domestic democratic foundation. Let us unite and jointly defeat the divisiveness of racism in our society. Department of Justice and Constitutional Development plans to deal with such matters through the introduction of legislation to address racism and in particular hate speech. Cabinet further calls on all South Africans to respect one another as envisaged in our Bill of Rights. Cabinet also reiterates the President's condemnation for the destruction of 24 schools by the people purported to be residents of the Vhembe district in Limpopo. We did express our disappointment to the fact that this destruction, of course, of educational infrastructure disadvantages our children and undermine the country's efforts to provide quality education. We welcomed the interaction between the President and the King of Vavenda, Kosikhulu Tovele Tony Mpepu Ramapulana, which was at the request of His Majesty on the 8th of May to resolve the issues of Vuwani. President has put in place a task team led by the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs to lead the process of developing a package of social infrastructure programs for the Makhado local municipality. Cabinet also thanked the ministerial task team led by Minister Van Rooyen on the inroads made to resolve this matter and appreciated the role played by the Office of the Premier of Limpopo, the Honorable Stanley Mathabata, and the Executive Mayor of Vhembe, Chitekere Matibe, the Executive Mayor of Thulamahela, Madam Grace Mahosi, and the Executive Mayor of Makhado, Honorable David Mutavantsidi. We've noted that during these meetings, traditional leaders made commitments to working very closely with government to resolve the crisis, and the traditional leaders have further condemned the destruction of property and the violence and called for the urgent resolution of this situation. Cabinet thanked all those members of the community and traditional leadership who have intervened to protect the remaining schools and creating an environment for ongoing dialogue. Cabinet reminded South Africans that our democracy affords all citizens a number of platforms to express their concerns and embark on constructive engagement towards an amicable solution. Residents of these districts are encouraged to isolate any elements who are leading and destroying the future of our children and report them to the law enforcement agencies. In a separate matter, Cabinet noted with great concern the continuing violence, disruption of schooling, and the banning of the traffic department and facilities in the Grabo area in the Western Cape. Cabinet reiterates that the full might of the law will be applied to those found guilty of criminal activity. Further, Cabinet conveyed its condolences to the families and friends of those who lost their lives due to flooding in KwaZulu-Natal. Government is providing disaster management services and relief to all victims affected by this flooding. Cabinet once more reminds South Africans to continue using water sparingly to secure sufficient supply for the future. Government, of course, supports continues to lessen the devastating effects of drought through short, medium, and long-term budget allocations to fund interdepartmental programs that respond to the special needs of drought-affected areas and the need to address water losses in critical supply networks. Government has established an interministerial task team on service delivery with representation from different sectors as part of the mitigation measures taken to offset the effects of the drought. Dam operating rules have been applied to 35 dams and 4 systems where restrictions are currently applied with regards to water resource. Cabinet noted with concern the strike action at the South African Post Office, the consequences of which have an impact on repositioning to better service South Africans. Government, through the Department of Telecommunications and Postal Services, is working to address the issues at the Post Office to bring stability and turn the situation around. We know that last August, the department appointed a new board, a new CEO, and strengthened a management to guide the operations and bring stability to SAPO. SAPO remains a strategic entity for extending government e-commerce and financial services to South Africans through its approximately 2,448 outlets. We're encouraged that management and leaders of organized workers are committed to negotiations as a route to resolve their differences. Lastly, Cabinet noted the judgment handed down by the Northwest Gauteng High Court to set aside the decision of the National Director of Public Prosecutions. Cabinet highlights that the court did not deal with the merits of any allegations against the President, nor did it make any finding declaring guilt on any matter against him, and Cabinet therefore calls on society to allow the National Prosecuting Authority to independently dispense with its constitutional obligation in terms of Section 1795 of the Constitution, without any undue pressure from any quarter. Cabinet congratulated the South African team of learners for winning the 24th Pan-African Mathematics Olympiad in Senegal. These are Lim Baker, Dylan Nelson, Seng Lee, Ralph McDougall, Timothy Schlesinger, Hannah Clayton, and Rosina Apude. I'm sorry, some of the names are difficult for me to pronounce. So it's not, I'm not being mean. And of course, Mpongwana. Lee was also crowned African Queen of Mathematics in the competition for girls for the second successive year. That ends the brief, and we are ready to field questions, colleagues. I have here, there are so many hands. I have here the Minister Nkukile Nkwinti from the Economic Cluster. The hands are so intimidating, I should say. And next to me here, the Deputy Minister responsible for the OPG. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Colleagues, again, I just want to point out that time is a challenge. Can I start at the back and work my way forward? What I'll do is I'll take the first 2 rows at the back and I'll take the next 2 rows. Ma'am, you first, and then we'll finish with the agenda. Okay.
Good morning, Marianne Merton, Daily Maverick. Ma'am, could you tell us a little bit more about whether Cabinet discussed the meeting of the 3 ministers with Labour, Mineral Resources and Finance with the bank's Labour Minister Olifant earlier in the week indicated that yes, indeed, there had been such meeting. Has Cabinet discussed that? What is Cabinet position? What is the outcome? Thank you.
I'm sorry, I think we should dispense with that quickly, no? So that we can take a discussion on... No. Just to indicate to you that this report was not tabled to Cabinet yesterday. And therefore, Cabinet did not engage in a discussion on the outcome of that meeting. And this report will be presented at the next Cabinet. So we have no information to provide to you on this matter for now. Thank you.
Jan de Lange from Report newspaper. It's clear that Cabinet was concerned about the quarterly labour force survey that was released on Monday and the increase in unemployment. And you say that the National Development Plan is a strategy for reducing unemployment, but the National Development Plan presupposes one of its basic presumptions and starting points is an economic growth rate of something like 5% and higher. And we didn't have that for some time. And economic analysts show that we are not going to have that for the foreseeable future, which means that the elasticity between economic growth and unemployment is disappearing, as we are clearly seeing now with an economic growth rate of less than 1%. We're losing jobs, we're not creating any. Therefore, I'm asking, is the National Development Plan still a viable and a relevant strategy to attack? Shouldn't we start looking at different measures? And secondly, a related one, the quarterly labour force survey showed that in Cape Town was the only metropolitan area where jobs were created. In fact, quite dramatically, unemployment declined from 26% to 23% over the last 12 months in Cape Town. Now, I mean, the reasons for that will be a party political war, but isn't it time to look at different strategies at local authorities, good governance at local authority level as a strategy to tackle unemployment?
Thank you, Kollegane Makubana from Business Day. I just wanted to find out from the Minister if there has been any indication at all of whether there were meetings between governments and the South African Reserve Bank over One Oak Bay investments. Thank you.
Minister, my question relates to Marianne's, and I'm sorry to labour it, but is there any, you said the table
the report wasn't tabled with the Cabinet, which we understand. Was there any discussion at all, perhaps a discussion that there was some delay in actually meeting the banks, as it has been reported already? Was there any discussion around this at all, explaining the delay? Because there seemed to be some urgency when Minister Radebe announced the decision. Thanks.
Thanks, Minister. Wendell, just again, apologies for belaboring the point. If you can confirm that the troika of ministers appointed actually met them as such, and that Minister Gordhan was part of this meeting to meet the whoever with the banks. Was Minister Gordhan part of that troika of team? And then just secondly, you suggested that government is concerned with the high employment rate. Is there a sense that given this proliferation over the past few years of social unrest and violent sort of social delivery protests, that the unemployment rate can actually sort of almost like feed into that? I mean, is the unemployment rate a cause for concern for social unrest?
That was the last question, right? Okay. Minister?
I will allow Minister Nkwinti to respond to the issues related to unemployment, but I do want to say that once more, on the matter of the meeting with the banks, when a report is presented to you of this meeting, you will also be informed about who attended the meeting with the banks. There's no point in me saying to you, so-and-so attended, so-and-so did not attend, when I'm unable to actually give you the gist of what and the outcome of that meeting. Gist of what was discussed and the outcome of that meeting. So when the minister in the presidency presents the report to you, hopefully after it has been tabled to Cabinet for a discussion, will obviously be given all the information which you require on this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The unemployment story. Yeah, you know, the National Development Plan, the assumption, I think the assumptions were that things would not be what they are now, that the economy is going down. There was an assumption that the economy would grow and reach the peak of 5% by 2030, and therefore I don't think that we should, because at the moment the situation is what it is, that we say we should lose faith in the National Development Plan in terms of its own predictions. We don't know what's happening in the next 10, 15 years. Remember, this is a global situation, but South Africa, in my view, and I am happy that Cabinet has taken a decision on the 16th of March that we pursue this route. In our view, in South Africa, you've got a great opportunity. You've got the underdeveloped part of South Africa, which is huge, the former Pakistan areas, the townships. So those areas are areas where you really could grow your economy. They are there. Now, Cabinet has taken a decision that the Minister of Finance, Minister of Economic Development, Minister of Rural Development and Reform, they should draft an socio-economic infrastructure network for the country. Now, this is going to incorporate these areas of potential growth, and hopefully this is an area which will assist us. Remember, if you look at the Stats South Africa report in analyzing the cohorts of unemployed, the greater part of that unemployment comes from those the groups that is uneducated or semi-educated. Now, if you look at the unrest that we're talking about in townships, this is a group of young people. Now, but of course, you have also, in terms of that SSA reports, you also have got this people who got post-matric, even graduates that are unemployed, etc. Now, remember, remember that much as the economy is not growing. Let's put it this way: people like to say the economy is growing at a very slow pace. The unemployment also is going down. Now, it's going down across the racial groups, by the way, which tells you that, but it tells you that there needs to be a lot of work done through the economic, rather the education system in the country, so that you have a match rather than a disjuncture between what is produced in the education system and what industry needs, particularly when it comes to, as the SSA report does indicate, the so-called colored and African young people. So it is an educational thing, and the emphasis, therefore, by the government on TVET education, or technical education, technical and vocational education, is one of the things that has got to be focused upon. It might just be that really that's what we need. So therefore, in summary, on this was such an important point that's been raised here. In summary, therefore, the area of greater, like in any country, the area of greater potential at the moment for South Africa is the former Bandustan areas. It is the townships where there is very little or no infrastructure at all. So, from the point of view of the national development of the 9-point plan, from the president's point of view, as said here, what the president has said, amongst other things, that we'll roll out the program of agri-parks, particularly in the 44 districts, and has budgeted 2 billion rands for that. And part of that, and a lot of that, will go to infrastructure build, so that you can have the conducive atmosphere or environment for people to come in and be positive about putting their money or planting their money in those areas. That's really what we're trying to do. Tomorrow we're meeting with all the district municipalities, with other outcome 7 ministries in the cabinet. We're meeting tomorrow actually to deal with this question, so that we can start moving out and dealing with the question of infrastructure built in rural areas, including ensuring that every piece of the land is cultivated. Because if you don't have the market, because what the agri-parks are meant to do is to provide the market possibilities, so that people can grow whatever they grow on their land and they'll sell. So we're happy that the private sector is part of that. In terms of the advisory council for the agri-parks, you'll have people from the professional organizations like DPSA, Agri-SA, represented there, the ARC, they're all there, IDC. It's not just a government departments, it's all of the interested parties there. We put together a team like that, as diverse as that, to make sure that the infrastructure is catered for, the production is catered for, the markets are catered for, the processing is catered for in the same institutions. So no, we're very concerned about the unemployment rate, and we think we can deal with it to a large extent that way. With regards to, well, you know, this is what is interesting about Cape Town. Yes, we noted that. Actually, you look at the 1994-2014 release from the Stats SA, it's the same, the pattern is clear there. But it's very interesting, because you have a lot of influx, a large influx of people from the Eastern Cape coming to Cape Town in the squatter areas. I don't know if, in fact, they do, that is taken into account, but certainly there's a lot to be learned from Cape Town. Remember that Cape Town draws a lot of people from even as we're struggling now with the economy, that tourism in Cape Town is a big economic advantage in Cape Town. Cape Town is laid back. People come here, they enjoy staying here. So that's something that we should look at and see whether, in fact, there's something that we could try to replicate elsewhere in the country. It's a wonderful experience that we're seeing. It's confirmed each time the reports come out from states. This question about, it should be, remember, this question about, from Makuba, just remember this. Even without this thing of OPE and other things, etc., it's a normal thing that the government, through the relevant ministry, will interact with the South African Reserve Bank regularly. All right? When we rolled out the 50-50, we started working on that, and we had to discuss, learn from what they're doing there, how they run this thing, how we should run this thing in such a way that we stick within the law and companies themselves, because now we're creating new companies with the 50-50 in terms of agriculture and farming. So you have to interact with that. It has nothing to do with, doesn't have to be a crisis for that to happen. So as to whether, with regards to this matter is concerned, we don't know. We don't know what the committee or the IMC is going to come up with when it reports to the president and then it's reported to cabinet. It's not done yet. Yeah, thank you. Thanks very much. It's a big question of the unemployment one. I hope you got that. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister Nkwinti. I'm going to allow Pretoria to take some questions on that side. And Deputy Minister Dlolo, once we've got the questions from Pretoria, I would like you to start by giving a brief précis. We did go quite quickly through the statement, but if you can give us a brief précis on the OGP, and then we can respond to the questions from Pretoria. Pretoria, over to you.
Thank you, Chairperson. We don't have questions in Pretoria.
Okay, that's great. Then, Minister Dlolo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Donald. South Africa took over in 2015 as the lead chair of the Open Government Partnership. And I stand in as the President's Special Envoy to the Open Government Partnership. We took over from Mexico. We lead a partnership of 69 member countries and some huge number of civil society organizations. We hosted the steering committee on the 3rd, on the 4th in Cape Town, and on the 5th and the 6th, we hosted the Africa Regional Summit. What came out of that summit was that for the first time we had a sizable number of smaller civil society organizations that were not traditionally part of the Open Government Partnership. And in a sense, they brought the grassroots embedded flavor of what civil society organizations would bring into a summit of that nature. And at the end of the summit, it was agreed that South Africa hosted the largest summit of the OGP ever, regional summit ever. The outcomes were the most qualitative, but also we were then requested to assist in developing an OGP regional summit blueprint. Because for a summit as big as that, for starters, we did not even employ the services of an events company. We did that ourselves with the complement of about 16 staff, if I'm not mistaken, with people from all over the continent and from many parts of the world as well. Under the theme that really relates to the implementation of Agenda 2063, the Sustainable Development Goals, and we had panelists that really speak to those issues. We invited the African Development Bank, we had NEPAD and the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, who are also responsible for ensuring the monitoring and creating tools to monitor and evaluate the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals in the continent. We also had Mo Ibrahim, who is an ambassador of the Open Government Partnership. We had the former chairperson of the IEC, Advocate Nqakula. We had quite a few people, luminaries from the continent, both from academia, from civil society, who really gave insightful presentations on the implementation of SDGs, on issues relating to access to information, on issues relating to the digital age and how communities can use, could innovate and use technology to access information. we unveiled the third country action plan of South Africa, which also includes a commitment on beneficial ownership, and the fact that we have already started rolling out the process of developing our own government portal, where we'll be looking at different data sets that will be put up into that portal. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. What we have done as well in South Africa is that we've created a partnership through the OGP with the media. And you will very well see that we've had quite a few meetings with the National Editors. We've had 2 meetings with the National Editors Forum. We've invited with us on the trip to the Mexico summit some media houses. So we have a very good relationship with the media on the Open Government Partnership, and we hope to enhance that. With the civil society organizations as well, we also have developed that very good relationship. And as we move towards implementation, we will be inviting people to assist not only in the implementation, but also in the assessment of where we are with regards to whether or not we did meet the commitments that we had set ourselves to between civil society and the government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Minister. Can I take another round of questions from Cape Town, and then we can need to close. Any questions? So is that your hand? Is that a hand? No? Okay. I think we can start.
Janet again from Media 24. Just on a point of clarity, Mr. Nkwinti, when you say Cape Town should be replicated, can you be a bit more specific what you actually mean there with regard to the tourism? What exactly should be replicated? Thanks.
No relative advantage. You know, in economics, you work on that, whether it's we're talking domestic or national context. You work on relative advantage. You know, Cape Town, as I said, is very strong on tourism. Cape Town has probably been able to identify that there's a niche, and they've worked on that niche. You know, there's something that may sound very normal. Now, people who use sign language, serving people there, you know, and Cape Town tells a story. It's a beautiful story, all right? You know, you go to this hotel here called the Westin. You just go there and look at how they position that hotel. You go there, if you go there once, you want to come back there. Cape Town is laid back, all right? It's laid back, and yes, there are challenges, serious challenges, as I said at the beginning of my input, that you've got lots of people who coming into Cape Town from the Eastern Cape, poor people at that. And yet we still can see the stability in terms of, you don't have a shoot up in terms of economic, rather unemployment in Cape Town, despite that. And so it tells you that Cape Town has been able to use that relative advantage of tourism to great effect. Now, every city in South Africa has got to look at that, say, what is our niche, what is our relative advantage, and make the best use of that. In my view, that's a lesson from Cape Town. It's not a political thing, it's a simple economic logic. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? Is it the last question? Okay, thank you.
Good morning, I'm Jenny Evans from News 24. Minister, could you please expand on the plans to introduce new laws against racism and hate speech?
Final question, I just follow up.
So, Mr. Nkwinti, strategy by focusing on local authorities, on say, sound governance, and I appreciate the economic advantage that Cape Town has, and identified the niche and developed it. But isn't it a better policy, strategy to look at local authorities to combat unemployment?
Okay, those are the last two questions. If I can just sum up. The first one is government's approach to legislation on racism and hate speech, and also to follow up around the issues of unemployment and economic growth, what our strategies are. Those are the two questions, Minister.
Thank you very much. I think it is proper that at this point in time, especially because all of us have noted the upsurge of racism in our society, that in the first instance we should conduct an introspection as to why we have this kind of upsurge 22 years down the line into our democracy. Is it not that we did lay a solid foundation to address some of the issues relevant to racism? What is it which has sparked this kind of attitude in South Africa? Because we believe, some of us, that we have worked very, very hard to really deal with issues of socialization of our people, social orientation, issues of racism, and the fact that we found ourselves 24 years ago, going backwards, in a situation where there was serious conflict in this country because of racial tensions and the racial laws which were there, which were encouraging discrimination. 22 years down the line, we've done away, we've removed all laws which allow for discrimination in our society. And we've done a lot of work in educating our people and empowering them in understanding the implications of those laws. Why the upsurge? I think it's a matter which all of us as society should engage in a dialogue on and seek to understand why is it that we are going backwards on this particular matter. And therefore, it obviously means that government must now, other than talking and engaging with communities, etc., should actually put a legislative framework which will encourage penalties to be put in place to deal with issues of racism. Because it's not as though there is ignorance. It's just that there are people who simply have decided that in spite of everything and the achievements which have been made in South Africa to deal with these issues, that they will simply continue because there's nothing stopping them against it. And I think that therefore the proposals made by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development and Corrections should be encouraged. Whether that will in fact change the attitude of some of the people who are now once more encouraging racism in South Africa is another matter. For me, it's a matter which is deep down in a person's heart, and whether there is commitment in to promote non-racism, non-sexism in South Africa, and promote the Bill of Rights which all of us committed ourselves to, and the Constitution which was adopted in 1996. I think that what is more disgusting, I should say, about the statements made by Judge Johnson is the fact that he's a member of the judiciary. and that in fact the judiciary, the way we see it as ordinary South Africans, not as politicians now, I'm just talking as an ordinary South African, these should be people who are beyond reproach, because the fate of a number of people lies in their hands. So if a member of the judiciary will make that kind of statement, you then want to go back and say, then who is going to protect the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa? She could have been appointed, for instance, into the Constitutional Court as a member as a judge into the Constitutional Court. She could have been easily appointed. If she's a judge in North Gauteng, she could have been a judge to the Constitutional Court. Now, what kind of judge is that who will make these kinds of statements? Where do we go to when we have a crisis of interpretation of the laws which we have, which we ourselves have put in place? Where do we go to for recourse in the event of a disagreement ensuing amongst ourselves? Where do we go to? Who do we approach, if not the judges? We respect the judiciary. And if some elements, some members of the judiciary are going to discredit the judiciary in the manner in which this lady has done, and I think it's so unfortunate, because she's not just white, she's also a woman. And a woman at a time when women are fighting strenuously against issues of violence against women and children. A woman makes this kind of statements. I think that we believe as government the penalties are a correct route to go, but still, for me, the onus is on the individual South Africans. It is about our commitment to this Constitution. It is about our commitment to never go back to where we were 24 years ago. It is about our commitment to non-racialism and non-sexism. And I think that the least we can do, all of us now, is to actually challenge some of the statements which people are making. By the way, this is not the first case. We've seen a couple of them in the past few months where people have made very serious derogatory statements which point to racism. And that is why I'm saying, therefore, the question is, why? Why 22 years into our democracy are we retrogressing on issues of racism? I think there's a problem, and we need to deal with the problem. And the only way in which society, South Africans, will deal with this issue is when South Africans engage and be honest with one another about the manner in which we conduct ourselves and how we see one another. Thank you. There's a minister who would like to make some additions.
Just deal with it.
Thank you very much, Minister. Just to add to this, I think racism is basically an assault on a collective that has already gone through a living experience of hate, because that's what racism is, and decades of violence against them. And the sad thing with that is, over the years, South Africa has sought to heal from that past. And what the incidents that we're seeing today actually do is to unravel all of that which we've done over the past few years to try and heal the pains of the past. Not only does it do that, we find that more and more it would create an environment where you are assaulted racially every day. You would then start to retaliate. Now you can imagine if we do not find ways of dealing with it legally by creating legislation and points of recourse to deal with issues of racism. that you will find a situation where it escalates beyond what it is today, and it becomes serious racial tensions between blacks and whites in South Africa. Something that all of us would not want to see. Because if it is left unfettered for many years, it will create a situation where those that are on the receiving end of racism will retaliate. And it is not going to be a good thing for our country. And the last thing that some of us would want to see, having come from that era, is a reverse of where we come from. Thank you.
Yes, as a follow-up, I just want to deal with the follow-up question on Cape Town. When I refer to Cape Town, I refer to Cape Town, including the municipality, because that's exactly the point here. If the government is in Cape Town, in other words, in the context of what I was saying, has been able to work with the private sector here. Remember, this is an old culture here. Have been able to work together so that I'm thinking institutional tourism, for example. In Cape Town, it's very strong. Table Mountain, Robben Island, the Sea Point, you've got other aspects of Cape Town which are attractive to tourists. The infrastructure there, the municipality must maintain that, make sure that it operates, runs, the infrastructure is operated properly, is maintained, so that there are no problems which can sort of repel people who would have come to Cape Town. Someone coming to Cape Town today will be an ambassador for Cape Town tomorrow, because I use the hotel there. I'm talking institutional tourism, because it's only through your municipality that you can build the kind of infrastructure and maintain it in a standard which will not repel people. People will want to come to Cape Town because the infrastructure is good, the environment is good, it's laid back, the institutions of tourism are there. People want to go to Robben Island, they go to the harbor or wherever, they go there, they come back, they tell the story about Cape Town. Go to Table Mountain, they tell the story about Cape Town. So it's institutional tourism that I'm talking to, which is inclusive of the private sector here, the government, whether it's provincial or municipal level. So those things are very important, things that you don't have very much negative things there. But remember at the same time, I don't know if you listened 2 days ago to radio. I was listening to radio, I think I was going to Beaufort West, Sakina Kamwendo. There's an angry man from the township, one of the townships in Cape Town, after the mayor had spoken. The angry man is hurling anger and almost swearing at the mayor because our conditions in the township, living condition in the township are very poor, are very bad. So you have this contradiction. And perhaps it was implied in my saying there's an influx of people from the Eastern Cape coming to Cape Town. The conditions are not as good as they would find. But the point I was making was that notwithstanding that, you still have a low level of unemployment in Cape Town, the lowest level of unemployment, because Cape Town has been able to maintain this institutional tourism, which is a great income earner for Cape Town. So I wasn't separating the municipality from the private sector and all of the institutions of tourism. Tourism becomes a big niche here. Those issues are critical to it.
Thank you very much, Ministers. Colleagues, I think that was a good note to end this on. Thank you for your time. That brings this to an end. Thank you. There is an ESCOM briefing after this with the international institutional investors.
Thank you. Okay, thanks for coming.
Suggesting the possibility of some sort of racial civil war.
Answer our question yesterday on the ambassadors. Why are we playing catch-up?
Former minister.
What does that mean? I don't know if you have talked to black children. This is what they see as parents. This is what they see as parents. This is what they experience. And they